Sanbonani, molweni, apsheni mzansi. I'm your guy, Isaack Lesole. Today we have one of those very, very important episodes on Transit Ringas. The only show that talks about your experience as a public transport commuter, the show that takes care of you as a pedestrian on our roads every day. Today we have a conversation about what exactly happens in the universe of the Road Accident Fund. What happens when you find yourself in an accident? What are the things that you are supposed to do? What are the things that you also need to look out for so that you don't expose yourself to this environment? So we're gonna have a conversation with a very, very controversial human being. Controversial because this person is sold to us as controversial, but we've taken our time to really go and check not only one person, but what is the relationship between attorneys in the country and the Road Accident Fund. And we just picked one of the well-known attorneys who will take us through this universe. So the focus is going to be, as I said, one, do we really have a problem as a country? Number two, we're going to check whether do we have the management that has the requisite gravitas, to deal with the road accidents in our country, because there has been. I personally have a family member who interacted with the Road Accident Fund in the past, and their experience was not the best. And what we're trying to do today is how do we make sure that the experience becomes better? So we are not about to bash anybody or bash any system. We want to make the system work. And I'm hoping that in the next show, we would have the Road Accident Fund here, to come and educate us better on how to navigate this universe. So today we have Gert Nel. So Gert, besides being the attorney, he also has a lot of money, right? He's got a lot of money. I'm told that he probably has about 600 million that he got from claiming from the Road Accident Fund. And I'm hoping that he's bringing a bit of that to us today so that at least we can do this. But we're going to just have a very ordinary a conversation just to make sure that everyone really gets comfortable and understand how this universe works. By the time you leave today, we must at least know what to do. And why is it important to use the attorney or an attorney if it is required to do so? And if it's not, what are the avenues that we can explore to make sure that you get what's due to you? So Gert, thank you for joining me. Thank you for accepting my request to see you. I've tried to speak to you a couple of weeks ago, but you've been everywhere around the world. But thank you for making time to be with us today, and welcome to Transit Ringas. You are actually the first attorney to be on our show. How do you feel about that?
No, I feel quite privileged, Isaac. Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity.
Right. Yeah. So like I said, I want to start this conversation in a particular way. What Transit Ringas is about, we educate, right? We educate, but we also want to find solutions to some of the well-known and documented problems. And we know, and you're going to have to educate me on this one. We know that a substantial number of pedestrians who unfortunately happen to be black, who happen to be poor because of their settlement and where they reside, who happen to be poor because some of them don't even have a chance or a hope that they will ever own a vehicle. They are dependent, they walk, navigate our roads, they jump in and out of taxis and public transport systems. So today what I want us to do is to first draw that universe and say the scene that says that, do we really have a problem? Do we really have a problem on our roads? Do we even have, is it fact that the people that are suffering on our roads first are pedestrians? So I'm doing this deliberately. I'm drawing this big picture because we're going to take it by bites, small bites, just to make something out of it. So here we're going to start here and say, how big is the road safety in our country, according to what your experience as an attorney who has dealt with victims of road safety?
Isaac, it's definitely a huge concern. I think road safety is not being made a priority to the extent that it should. You're exactly correct. Unfortunately, in the region, about 40% of all claims that are lodged at the Road Accident Fund are related to pedestrian accidents. And unfortunately, as you've explained, it is illiterate, black people, unemployed. And as you've indicated, it's the only mode of transport is using public roads as walkways and crossing roads at places that they shouldn't actually be crossing, but they don't have any other choice because it's either close to their homes or there's no infrastructure to accommodate them otherwise. But I think that road safety and education around being a pedestrian, making yourself more visible on the roads and applying a bit more savvy to using the roads, I think would make a huge contribution to that. But I think that it would be a small drop in the bin, right, as far as preventing actual figures, from coming down from 40%. I mean, you can imagine how much accidents we're talking about, and that's unfortunately a daily occurrence. That is what it is. It's a fact.
So there's also an allegation or a claim, I don't know what it is, that the minister, in fact, maybe this is a fact, the minister, when she gave reports now, 2024, 2025 fatalities, there's a trend, an upward trend on road accidents. I want to ask, because this country has signed the UN Sustainable Development Goals to reduce the road accidents and fatalities on our roads by half by 2030. With your experience, you might not be the best person to talk about it, but you can give me an opinion, right? To say, do you think that by 2030 we will be able as a country to reduce road accidents if what we're doing continues to happen the way we're doing it? Do you think that we will be able to achieve that goal?
Isaac, I think if there's a huge mindset shift in terms of proactively promoting road safety, and depending on which department is going to take the lead on promoting this subject, it is very real, and it addresses to a large extent the plight of the Road Accident Fund as well. Is because it makes absolute sense that the more accidents there are on the road, the bigger the road accident fund's liability. So you would accept that government would take charge of such a huge responsibility and make a difference. Unfortunately, in my own personal experience from having to deal in a few years ago with the Road Accident Benefit Scheme Bill, which was set before Parliament, one of our very well-known professors in law, Professor Klopper, made a presentation on road safety. And when he was done with this incredible presentation on statistics and solutions, even to the problem, the questions that were asked were in no way related to, or gave any indication that there was a real concern or that there would be a institution taking a responsibility or the lead in promoting road safety. So I would really like to see that somebody takes that responsibility upon themselves and promote road safety. I think our firm's budget on road safety, I think, is even bigger than some of the government institutions that I've seen annual reports on, including the Road Accident Fund. We've got a project that we're promoting road safety called RAF Buddy, that we're taking road safety to the schools and teaching children about road safety, because I think that's the future. If you want safer drivers, you need to have safer learners on the road. So you need to instill that basic knowledge of road safety. And I think that's where we should start, is to start with the learners and get a country that's got that there's a climate to promote road safety, in each one of us, get the self-respect and the responsibility in each and every one to consider the person next to you and the life that you could possibly change because of a simple mistake or error that you make on the road. So I definitely think that is something that needs urgent attention, and I would be very pleased to see that whichever government institution, whether it's RTMC or the Road Accident Fund to some extent, make an effort to actually promote this on a larger scale that we're seeing at the moment.
I wanna double click on the mindset. That a person who's given the responsibility or a permit to drive a car is certified to be ready to be on our road, and therefore the assumption is that they know exactly what to do on our roads. If you were to take that and look at the causes of the fatalities and accidents in our country, it is found that 90% or above, it is as a result of human error. It is the driver who is either fatigued, who is either driving speedily, who is either distracted by a cell phone. So it is the human being who is always at the heart of the accidents. Is it still wise for us as a country to take all our money, invest on the person who has made a conscious decision not to comply? Is it still wise that when you go to Limpopo or to Free State on the N1 peak seasons, there's some pamphlets and flyers that are issued to motorists to say that is this effective? Because if there's an upward trajectory, it means that there's a problem, that the investment is misplaced. Would you agree with that assumption?
Definitely. I think creating a more safer road user environment, there needs to be more policing. There needs to be sanctions. Because a sanction would compel any reasonable person to think carefully about what his next step is going to be. And I think, unfortunately, that is the reality that we're dealing with. And I think that's one of the concerns that you're addressing on your show as well, is the lawlessness on our
Right.
roads. Is
Right.
you can put a perfect driver behind a wheel, and if he feels that he can skip a robot and without any penalty, then he's going to do that. If somebody knows that if I skip this robot, I'm going to have my license withdrawn, that's something totally different. So I think there needs to be a more proactive approach to addressing lawlessness on the roads. That's the only way that you're going to be able to get the worst and the best drivers to
Right.
get in line, to make sure that we all abide by the same rules. And with all due respect, we can see to a large extent in the Western Cape, if you're traveling, I do a lot of traveling, so I can tell you which provinces' standards are where they should be in terms of road safety or making an effort to have better road safety. And I can promise you, I think any of your viewers that has traveled to the Western Cape or even, Cape Town, the policing there is really good in terms of you're aware of the fact that you're not going to use your phone there while you're driving. If you don't have Bluetooth, you're not going to put your handset against your ear because you are going to be fined. And you are going to stop at a robot because you are going to get fined if you don't do that. And I would really like to see that the same approach is followed in the rest of the country, because that would address many of these concerns, is to make sure that there's more prevalent policing on our roads, to make sure that the people on the side of the road aren't seen as KFC bucket collectors.
Right.
Because unfortunately, that is what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, we all travel, we all see these people that are unfortunately overweight and look as if the only thing that they're doing the whole day is eat KFC. I'm saying that with the utmost respect. You want people that look as if they can actually run you in if they need to.
Right.
If you stop your car and you start running, they'll be able to catch you.
Right. Yeah.
So I think, and optics is a huge factor as well. I mean, if you've got roadblocks and you've got people there that are actually doing it the right way and making a concise effort to identify unroadworthy vehicles and immediately impound those vehicles and make sure that that vehicle is on the road that it should, I think that would make a huge effort. But in my view, sanctions, penalties are the only way that we're going to get drivers to think twice before they're going to do something. Obviously, driver fatigue is something else.
Right.
But I think instilled into that would be the responsibility that if I'm traveling long distances, I should maybe consider to stop and maybe walk around the vehicle, or maybe sleep over, or whatever the case might be.
Right.
So I think it's going to be a team effort. If it's not going to be individually changed mindset. It's going to have to be a national approach to road safety, and I would like to see that happening, because that's really what our country needs.
This is important to you as the viewer, because what you and I know is that we only modify our behavior on the road only when we know that we are being monitored. You only change your behavior only when you know that there's a speed camera mounted somewhere. So it means that we can't be trusted with responsibility ourselves as motorists or drivers, only when we know that there's police that we start modifying our behavior. This is something very important that I would want us to look at in detail, because there's a relationship between this and the demerit system, which we'll talk about at a different show, to say that what do we do when people continue this brazen lawlessness. But because of that, this has created an opportunity for unscrupulous traffic officers to just milk out of this kind of behavior, because instead of holding you accountable, they would rather get cold drink money, and all you can, now people know, now drivers know that you need to have a 200 rand at the back of your pocket for you to survive a journey. Now, that is a big issue. because the traffic officers have this that we see there is being birthed by law enforcement agencies, especially these officials that I call unscrupulous. And I think we need to place a bit of our attention on that. And we will do this at a different show. But for today, I wanted us to really look at these aspects that we've dealt with, and a few more to come. But I just want to ask you this question though, to say, noting that majority of the claimants of the road accident fund would be black because of the number of deaths that we're seeing on the roads. We've also established that majority of them will not be educated enough to navigate the complex process that you will be faced with when you claim with the road accident fund. We have had some very interesting news that RAF has now made it possible for claimants to claim directly with the road accident fund. One, I want to check how feasible is that. Two, I also want you to speak to me about the behavior of attorneys. There is an established claim out there. I don't know if established and claim would go together, but it is believed that attorneys are taking advantage of the road accident claimants. I want us to talk about that, but first let's deal with the feasibility of claimants going directly to the road accident fund. What does that mean in law?
Isaac, I think we must just maybe factually just explain it to the viewers. It's not a decision that the Road Accident Fund has made. In fact, after the benefit scheme bill was disposed of in Parliament, because the basis of the benefit scheme would have been that victims would have been able to gain access to the scheme directly. Mm-hmm. So when that was when that whole issue is around the benefit scheme bill was resolved, then the Road Accident Fund unfortunately had a lot of claims that they took in that time frame that the benefit scheme bill was in the process of being debated in Parliament and the rest of that, probably to see as a pilot project to see whether it would be feasible for people to engage the benefit scheme directly. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, what the Road Accident Fund realized is that they were getting top heavy with a lot of claims that they can't deal with. And subsequently, many of those claims prescribed, and then they opted to summons themselves in order to interrupt prescription, and that caused all sorts of chaos. And at the end of the day, they just stopped it because they see that it wasn't feasible. So at the moment, as things stand, the viewers must realize that the Road Accident Fund Act allows for two approaches. Right. Either you can do the claim yourself. In other words, you as a victim can collate all the necessary documentation that you would require, and you can compile a claim and you can lodge that with Road Accident Fund as a claimant. Right. Essentially, the Road Accident Fund is not supposed to guide you because they can't. The viewers must appreciate that it's still an adversarial system because you need to prove to what extent you had fault in the matter. So you can't really expect the person that needs to consider that to decide with you how much that liability would be or even what the amount would be. So it's actually a contradiction in terms. So the reasoning behind that was that you would, as a victim, do it on your own without the assistance of the fund.
Right.
And then the other option that you do have is that you can engage the services of a legal practitioner and allow the legal practitioner to assist you to compile all of the documents and go through the process, and obviously take your hand and make sure that you get the compensation that is due to you. So unfortunately, I think in the recent months or years, the relationship was, in terms of what the fund's expectation of you as a victim is in terms of engaging them directly, got a bit fudged because of a narrative that was created by the Road Accident Fund that lawyers exploit the victims and you should rather not make use of a lawyer and come to us directly. So that in itself is a problem. I'm not naive to think that there aren't, unfortunately, some of my colleagues that do exploit victims of road accidents, and there's a process for that as well, as with anything. So I'm sure that the viewers will appreciate that there is something called the Legal Practice Council. It's very easy to engage them and report an attorney. They will send a letter to this attorney on a formal complaint basis, and that attorney can be taken to book. So, but for me, the important thing for any victim is to, before you engage or decide what you want to do, is to do your research well. Go on to Google, on the fact that you're on this platform means that you've got access to that type of information, and just Google the attorneys that are in this field of law. And I'm sure that they would find that the attorneys that's got a reputable status in terms of this kind of work would have been there for many years. I mean, they wouldn't have been practicing for 20 or 30 years if they were in the business of stealing their clients' money. So it's not that difficult to secure the services of a reputable lawyer. But, we find that in the public eye and when this Road Accident Fund talks about engaging the Road Accident Fund, they make it seem as if it's such an easy process that the victims of road crashes can engage them directly.
Let's talk about a little bit about that. I want to talk about that because in my experience with my own family member is that I have never dealt with something as a layman, something as complex as that, gathering medical records. It's a very, very complex and very intense process. Talk to me about that process itself. Typically, what would it entail? Because I want to show that, or rather demonstrate that it is rather dangerous, because I know it is rather dangerous for me as a layman to even start taking a chance with something like that, because it's a specialized field, right? And to speak to me about that so that at least we can dip into that and then educate and show the viewer out there that it is safer to do it differently as opposed to how you are encouraged to do it, because you could lose quite a bit.
Exactly. Isaac, yes, a very important fact that the viewers must remember is that you've only got 3 years to do a claim. So from the date of accident, you've only got 3 years. In matters where the identity of the driver or the other person that you would think were liable, you've only got 2 years. So the people must be mindful of the fact that there's various approaches to lodging a claim and time frames. So the other important factor you touched upon is the fact that you've only got one chance to claim. And in many instances, a road traffic crash is life-altering. Many people can't work anymore. They lose limbs. And some instances, they lose their breadwinner. So, if you're the unfortunate victim of a road crash and you have to decide what is the best option for me, surely you would like to have the captain of the soccer team or the rugby team to do this matter on your behalf, because you know that you're going to be successful and that you're going to get as much as you should in terms of what the law would allow. But the viewers must be mindful of the fact that at the moment, many of the things that I've gone on record with, I've got a huge concern with, because if we break the approach of the Road Accident Fund down, we must accept that the Road Accident Fund is a creature of statute. In other words, anything that the Road Accident Fund does or seem to do must be in terms of the Road Accident Fund Act. Anything outside of that act is obviously unlawful.
Right.
So if we approach the lodgement of a claim in terms of the Road Accident Fund Act, and that's actually why the lawmakers made it possible for people to engage the fund directly, because if I'm in an accident and I want to lodge a claim, I only need 2 documents to do that. To lawfully lodge a claim is an affidavit in which I explain how the accident happened, and 2, an RAF1 claim form with a medical report to show what injuries I've had. And that's the 2 legs of an RAF claim, is you explain how the accident happened, and the second place is what your injuries were, because your compensation is based upon that.
Right.
So that is the general approach, and that is the approach in terms of the Road Accident Fund Act as we know it. But unfortunately, since 2022, the Road Accident Fund have introduced what we call board notices. So a board notice is basically a piece of paper that the management of the Road Accident Fund decided to introduce to have, for instance, 20 additional requirements that you need to comply with in order to lodge a claim with the Road Accident Fund. Even though I've lodged my claim in terms of the Act, in the view of the management of the Road Accident Fund, if you didn't include the other 20 items, they're not going to register your claim. So
Are the 20 items sanctioned by law?
no, it's not a requirement in terms of the Road Accident Fund Act. Okay. So it actually falls outside of the Act. It's unlawful. It's been found unlawful by various courts already. But unfortunately, the Road Accident Fund is still implementing this. So what that means for the viewers are that you as a layman can go and lodge your claim in terms of the Road Accident Fund Act. But because of this, and I call it a parallel system that the Road Accident Fund is currently managing, is they will not allow your claim to be lodged lawfully because they want you to lodge it in terms of this unlawful board notice, which is so by design, because they need to limit the amount of claims going into the system, because it's a balancing act at the end of the day in terms of their financial liability and in terms of their financial standard or their accounting standard that they currently employ, because they base their contingent liability on the amount of claims that they lodge or they register. So we lawyers that are in this arena obviously has a huge issue and fight with the Road Accident Fund, because they are now single-handedly excluding the major part of the victims. And in terms of their annual statements, 97% of all claims that are being or that are supposed to be lodged with the Road Accident Fund are not recognized because it doesn't comply with the board notice. So everything that the Road Accident Fund currently does is in terms of the 3% that are board notice compliant. Those matters that you find that people, or with the assistance of a lawyer, because I promise you won't be able to do it without the assistance of a lawyer, not now. In terms of the Act, you can. But the fund has now made it so difficult that you have to make use of a lawyer. So it's basically a contradiction in terms. On the one end, the Road Accident Fund wants to exclude lawyers from the system, but on the other hand, they're making it so difficult for the public to gain access that you can't do it without the assistance of a lawyer. So I'm not sure exactly what they're playing at. So, but the bottom line is, at this point in time, for you as a victim of a road crash, it would be a futile exercise to try and engage the Road Accident Fund on your own, because you'll be met with the same resolve as we have with this board notice situation. So we faced with lodging the claims in terms of the Act. I can lodge a claim by way of registered post. So I've got a document to show that I've lodged the claim. It's statutory compliant. So in terms of the Act, it's a valid claim. It's in the system, but they don't recognize it. So that claim returns 2 or 3 years later in the form of a default judgment. And then the Road Accident Fund doesn't know where the claim came from, but they forgot that they turned it away at the door. So it's really something for me as a legal practitioner dealing with this on a daily basis. It's unthinkable that an institution can on the one end go and say, listen, don't make use of lawyers in the system because they are going to steal your money. But on the other end, you're driving them into the arms of the very people that you're warning them against.
Or you just follow this directive and end up losing everything.
Exactly.
Because you have one chance. And if you don't do it right from the beginning, you will end up losing and exploiting that one chance that you have and lose everything.
Yeah.
This is scary. And on this one, I really would want to talk to the Road Accident Fund management about this. One, to understand what's the relationship between these new regulations and the Act. I would want to understand what that relationship is.
Isaac, I can tell you the one explanation that they tender is the fact that they want to prevent lawyers or victims from lodging claims without being a complete claim. In other words, what they want is they want to have a claim that's lodged with all your medico-legal reports, because we must appreciate, if you want to prove that I'm going to suffer a loss of income for the rest of my natural life, which might be another 30 years, how do I as a layman prove that?
Sure.
I can only prove that by submitting what we call medico-legal reports.
Right.
Those medico-legal reports cost on average 15,000 Rand for one report. So now the Road Accident Fund, in terms of this board notice, requires you as a layman, you unemployed, you illiterate, you a black person staying in a rural area that don't have access to information or the services of a lawyer like myself. You now have to do this on your own, and you have to submit a complete claim for the Road Accident Fund to consider in terms of the board notice. So yes, it is indeed so. I agree. If it's even possible to do that, to lodge a claim, you can possibly settle it within 120 days, because that is what they would come and tell you, is we are requiring road crash victims or practitioners to lodge a complete claim so that we as the fund can consider the claim and we can make an offer within 120 days.
Do we know, Gert, how many direct and successful claims have been made with the Road Accident Fund, where Isaac, as a layman, took a piece of paper, did the affidavit, and beginning to end of the process, and submitted a claim, successfully submitted a claim. Do we know? Do we have the stats on that?
Well, I can only fall back on what the CEO's answer was when he was asked the very same question in Scopa at the end of last year. They don't know. So the Road Accident Fund themselves don't have any statistics on that, which is disconcerting, because if you go onto a public platform and say that attorneys are preventing us from doing our work because we can't settle claims within 120 days if they lodge a claim in terms of the Act, surely you should have statistics to show how many of those 3% claims that you do allow do you settle a month. There aren't any statistics on that. It's not even shown in their annual report. So we don't know. And from my own experience that I've seen in my practice and practices of other lawyers doing the same work, is that they don't even settle those claims. Even if I give them a fully fledged claim with a red bow on it, with everything that they need, they still don't settle those claims within 120 days. So that's the unfortunate reality of this thing, is in the public eye, they're painting this picture of we being bullied by practitioners not being allowed to do our work because we want a complete claim. This is a board notice with 20 additional requirements, and that's all that we ask for. But they don't go under the surface of that and explain to the public embedded in those 20 further requirements are expenses and documents that you would probably not be able to secure if you maybe were on holiday and you occurred an accident, let's say in Natal, but you're staying in Limpopo.
Right.
Now you have to source your accident report from
The other province.
Howick in Natal,
Sure.
and you sitting in a small place in Limpopo that you won't be able to draw reference to.
Sure.
There's no way that you're going to have to appoint an attorney that can send somebody to that police station to collect your accident report. That's the way that it happens. So for the fund to cry foul and say that lawyers or the public don't want to comply with the board notice, to try and prolong the process, because that's what they say. According to them, we want a matter to go further than 120 days because then we can summons and then we go to court. Because the longer we take on a matter, the more money we make out of the claim. But if you are in a position to settle those claims, because, just as a matter of interest, Isaac, for me, as a practitioner, if I've got a matter that I've summoned the Road Accident Fund on, and I have to apply for a trial date, I can only apply and secure a trial date if my matter is trial ready. So that would mean that it's got everything that it needs for me to settle that claim today.
Right.
But that trial date is only going to be in 6 years' time. So we're talking 2031, 2032. So if you as the Road Accident Fund are sitting on thousands of matters that are trial ready, why don't you focus on those matters? Start settling them. If you want to impress the minister or somebody else in saying, listen, but this board notice is going to address this backlog of claims, if they manage to get it done, at this point it's only 3% of matters. At what point in the future are they going to show the statistics to say that, well, this actually worked? Why don't you start working on the matters that are trial ready, that are actually compliant with the board notice, because it's over a period of time, those documents were able to be compiled. So start working on those matters. I've never seen the CEO of the Road Accident Fund actually addressing that issue in his mind, or from what I've seen from interviews. For the audacity for summoning me, I will penalize you for having to wait for your trial date 6 years down the line. So that's the unfortunate reality. In the Road Accident Fund's view, they're not able to attend to a matter once a summons has been served. So you're going to have to wait for your trial date, which is, I can't really see what the reasoning behind that is, other than they can't start settling those matters because obviously it will influence their financial liability at the end of the day.
So, the followers and the viewers of this show are your typical pedestrians and public transport commuters who every day pray to God that they make it through the day, right? So they're sitting in a very, very difficult position, and our responsibility as the show is to educate them and ensure that if the undesired, if you like, a situation happens and they're involved in an accident, what are the best things to do? And that's what this show is about. What is it? What is the process? How to follow that? And I'm gathering from you that the one important thing, unless you know for sure what to do, the best and the only safe avenue for a pedestrian or a victim would be to find a legal practitioner who understands the system. That's what I'm taking out of this. And this is important because I want to talk to the Road Accident Fund about this whole process from their point of view. But until we are given anything different, the safest thing to do is to appoint a legal practitioner who will take you through the process. I want to ask a question. What percentages, what does the law permit in terms of compensating the legal practitioner? Because you would find that somebody has charged the victim 2 million rand, or they've taken the money that was paid into the trust fund, it has not gone to the victims, and understanding that there's a recourse. We understand that. But what does the law permit? from a compensation point of view? Is there 50%? Is there 20%? What does the law say about the compensation of this person? Because understandably, when the accident happens, chances are that I do not have the financial muscle to appoint you, pay you for what you require, because I don't even know when I'll get paid. So take us through that process, taking into account the set cases that have been reported in the public domain about some of your colleagues that have been very unscrupulous, I should say.
Isaac, definitely a very relevant question. And there's an easy answer to that. There is an act called the Contingency Fees Act that allows practitioners to charge what we call a success fee upon finalization of the matter.
Right.
So the requirements are that there should be a legal agreement. In terms of the law, the Contingency Fees Act is very strict on what that agreement should look like. And obviously, there needs to be certain considerations taken into consideration on that. And the reality is that everything after that process is governed in terms of that act. So anything that you do that falls outside of that act obviously is unlawful. So the other end of the coin is that apart from the agreement being lawful, you can only charge a fee if the matter is successful. So you would find that a legal practitioner engages you and explains to you what they can or cannot do. And they would also explain to you that they would finance this process on your behalf. So the financing obviously would entail, for instance, covering the expenses of what is required in terms of the act and of late in terms of the board notice. All of these further requirements that the Road Accident Fund asks in terms of the board notice are in any event documents that we have to gather and collate as the process evolves. So a lawyer can only operate within that act specifically. So when the matter is finalized, obviously the attorney, for the risk that he took, and for the fact that he financed the matter on your behalf, is allowed then to draw a fee. Now that fee is not a percentage. He cannot just draw a percentage of the matter, and that's very important for the viewers to take into account, because any agreement that stipulates that I can just charge a certain percentage, whether it's 10, 20 or 25%, without an additional requirement is not lawful.
Okay.
You can't do that. So the attorney is allowed to draw up what we call a bill of costs on an attorney and client basis. Obviously, the success fee will be based upon that. So for the viewers that are already in that process or might have been, or for the future reference, my and what I call the fundamentally safe approach to contingency fee agreements is that the client would always receive 75% of whatever the settlement is at the end of the day.
Right.
That for me is the high water mark that has been confirmed in case law, and that is the easiest, safest way of approaching a contingency fees agreement. So the viewers should be mindful of the fact that it is a very strict act. It is once the matter is settled, the practitioner is required to deliver a copy of that to the Legal Practice Council of the actual agreement. Alternatively, they must hand it up to the court so that the court can have a look at the document and make sure that it complies. And in the final instance, if a client receives all the money that the lawyer says that he should have received and he doesn't get to a 75%, then there is the Legal Practice Council that he can engage and say, listen, this is my history of the matter. This is what I've been promised. This is what I've received. Please, can you just have a look at it? And they will take it further. So, unfortunately, I think having regard to where a victim is at the time when such an agreement is engaged in, because it needs to be done at a sufficiently early time in the process, and usually it's the first consultation. But the victim should have a copy of that agreement in his possession. So at any stage, there's a cooling off period in that agreement of 14 days. If they find that there's something that they're not in agreement with, or they spoke to somebody else that says, no, listen, this thing doesn't look like it's supposed to look in terms of the Act. So, and there's always the Legal Practice Council in the final instance, to have a look at the document. And if it's found that the document is invalid, obviously the attorney would be spoken to, and there would be a process after that to ensure that the victim is compensated accordingly. So there's a right way of doing this, and that's why I've made it my life task to look into contingency fees. I've written an article on contingency fees that won an award, to explain to practitioners and to the public, how does this thing work? Because with all due respect, I think even the Road Accident Fund gets it wrong, because I think that general approach in the public is that an attorney charges 25%. That's not what the Contingency Fee Act says. That's not the requirement. So I think people need to be mindful of the fact that if you engage the services of a lawyer, make sure that he understands the Act. He cannot simply just charge 25%. That's not what the Act says. So they need to do their research and make sure, and hopefully the Road Accident Fund will also catch onto that, because 25% is in actual fact, it's not a fee, it's a cap that's been built into the Act. So it is a bit technical, but at the end of the day, if you understand it and if you grasp, it's quite easy.
So you're saying that your 500 million you've made in accordance with the Act.
I can honestly say that every cent was earned in terms of what the Contingency Fee Act allows me to charge over 25 years in practice. So that's how long we've been in business.
But okay, Gert, I just want to do something. There's a sense of a contradiction in what you said. One, that of late, the attorneys are now supposed to submit claims in terms of the Road Accident Fund Act, and then the board something, right? And you also said that the board is, you call it a parallel system, which means that it is not whatever that these requirements are the RAF's management requirements and not the law. And you are saying that now of late you guys are now claiming in terms of the Act, and you are including the requirements, the management's report. Are you not giving credence to what is unlawful by recognizing and claiming in terms of this, or you doing this for what purpose?
Isaac, I don't give any attention to the board notice. For me, it's just a piece of paper that's a waste of time. It's not worth the paper it's written on. It's not me saying that. It's the courts saying that it's unlawful.
Okay.
Because it is. Because if the viewers appreciate the fact that the law is strict, it's again, it's a creature of statute. Anything outside of the law, the Road Accident Fund Act, and the CEO actually mentioned it in one of his interviews, that he's never found an act where the procedure is enacted. It's not in the regulations, it's in the act itself. That tells you that the lawmakers did it in that way so that you don't tinker with the act, because then you find unintended consequences like we're dealing with now. So what the executive of the Road Accident Fund has done is they started to tinker with the Road Accident Fund Act, and they're running this parallel system. So by no means am I complying with the board notice. Okay. I'm following the Act, and I'm lodging claims, I'm settling claims, I'm getting court orders in terms of the Act. So whatever the Road Accident Fund does with the board notice is the frolic of their own. I mean, because that is what the courts have said.
Right.
You're not allowed to do this. They've been ordered to disregard this board notice, but they're still having it there. And that makes it difficult for the viewers, because what do I do now? If I want to lodge the claim myself, in terms of the Act, I can do it quite easily, even without the assistance of a lawyer. But you're going to get a person going to the Road Accident Fund that does the claim 100% in terms of what the Act requires. He's in a wheelchair. His claim prescribes tomorrow. He's on his last day.
Guys.
That guy will be turned away by the Road Accident Fund and told that your claim is not compliant with my board notice. So a day later, his claim prescribes. So he loses the opportunity to lodge a valid claim in terms of the Act. So that is the reality of what we're dealing with. So you can imagine the chaos that the Road Accident Fund and the executive is subjecting victims and practitioners or anybody in this field of law at the moment, because they're running this system on the side of the Act, outside of the Road Accident Fund Act, which can never be. I mean, you can't build an airplane on a blueprint and you decide, no, you're not going to put in this flap or that rudder because you don't feel it's necessary, and the plane crashes because you didn't comply with the blueprint of the Act. That's exactly what the Road Accident Fund is doing now. They're assembling a vehicle that is unroadworthy by design, because we must accept that they're doing that, because in terms, there's a further story to this, is if the viewers must realize that the fund has also been subjecting their own accounting standard to an unlawful process.
What does that mean?
It means that the Road Accident Fund labels themselves as a social benefit scheme, which it is not. It's social legislation, but it's not a social benefit scheme. It's social insurance. So in terms of the social insurance model that the Road Accident Fund is, and that's what they are in terms of the Act, and again, it's not me, there's case law that confirms that, is that in terms of that social insurance approach, their liability is determined on every single accident that happens today that can be a potential liability for the Road Accident Fund down the road. That is where their liability stands, and that's why their liability at some point were at 330 billion. So when the new CEO proposed, or the board, that they should introduce...
Who's the CEO there?
No, it's Mr. Lesole, the current CEO. He introduced this new accounting standard, Collins.
Okay.
So in terms of the new standard, they're labeling themselves as a social benefit scheme, which they're not. The courts confirmed that they're not a social benefit scheme by no means. They are even close to the social benefit scheme. But they adopted a new accounting model in terms of which they determined their liability based upon the amount of claims registered with them. So if you've been listening, you would realize that Board Notice 271 that they're applying is by design to support their accounting standard. Because if my accounting standard is based upon the amount of claims that I register per month, and I can limit that to 3% of claims to show that I'm making a success of this thing, then you're going to keep on using Board Notice 271 because you need to support this accounting standard. So they've been ordered by the courts, they've been ordered by the minister even at the end of last year at Scopa to stop this nonsense of applying themselves as a social benefit scheme, but they're still not doing that. So they're still, for the viewers' interest, they're still complying and holding the viewer or the victims accountable to Board Notice 271, which is unlawful and which has been created to support the accounting standard, which is also unlawful. Hence my view that they're running a parallel RAF social benefit scheme on the side of what the actual Act is. Everything on the side has already been found unlawful. Each and every instance that it's been tested in court, it's been found unlawful.
Okay, so I'm sitting here and I am listening to you constantly saying unlawful, unlawful, being found by a court of law, it's unlawful, but things continue. How do we get to a point where the minister will say something is unlawful, the court says something is unlawful, and it continues? How do we get to that position? Can you share with me what would that mean? Because you said that the road accident fund is a creature of the law, and if something is unlawful, why does it continue? Do we know?
Isaac, I can only speculate, but I think even for the viewers, I think many of them would realize that the board and the executive of the fund is being protected for some reason. I've never in my professional life encountered a institution or a CEO or management of a institution that is in the public eye acting so unlawful in everything that they do. And again, it's not me, it's the courts. It's been not a single court, various courts, even the Constitutional Court, has found that what they are doing is unlawful. And even with instruction from the minister and the deputy minister at a SCOPA meeting at the end of last year that they should abandon their approach on the accounting standard, they're still doing it. So that tells me that either the minister is being told to leave it, or alternatively, I can't say. It's just too difficult to determine, because for me as a practitioner, I'm not supposed to go there,
right?
Because this is not how it's supposed to work. Okay. The Road Accident Fund is created to compensate the victims of road crashes. That is the sole purpose of the Road Accident Fund. What we're seeing now is completely the opposite. And they're being allowed to do that at the expense of our victims. It's not about me being a white lawyer, making a success of this, or exploiting the Road Accident Fund. That's something that I've heard Macintosh Bulela making a huge thing of. I worked at the fund. Yes, I worked at the fund. I was a student when I was working at the fund. I was doing my LLB. That was 30 years ago. Right. I mean, for them to come and say that I'm exploiting the Road Accident Fund's difficulties 30 years down the road. I mean, if you can't close those gaps, if there are any, I mean, what they're basically doing is they're trying to reinvent the act to protect whatever they're doing at the moment, because even the Attorney General has given them a qualified accounting report. Now, that's the worst kind of report.
You mean the Auditor General?
The Auditor General.
Yeah.
So, I mean, for me, it's a question of fudging your figures to such an extent, because what they did with the accounting standard, if you remember, I said that they were at 330 billion in a deficit. And overnight, when they introduced this new accounting standard, they were 30 billion into a deficit. So they cut 300 billion deficit overnight by accounting. That would say that they're not recognizing 300 billion worth of liability on their books. So that equates to a large portion of our victims that are not going to be made provision for going down the future.
Which then brings me to this. It says that any of the followers and viewers, or anybody who's just a victim of road accident in South Africa, it's important for us to engage the Road Accident Fund, but we want to engage the Road Accident Fund on real issues, on factual basis. It is for this reason that we're going to have to ask you at this point that if you have had an interaction with the Road Accident Fund, good or bad, on all our social media platforms, go on our link And once you open that app, you're going to find there's a button there, report experience with Road Accident Fund. Give us as much information as possible so that we can help you engage the Road Accident Fund. We can help you engage the attorneys so that we understand where things are. It is not acceptable that as a qualifying victim or claimant, you are pushed out or your claim is pushed out because of some regulations that are concocted on the side of the road. What we're going to do here is that you're going to give us your claims. We're not lawyers. We're not even attempting to, but as part of what we do every day is to actually understand what your experience is. So speak to us, give us as much information as possible, and we will take this to the Road Accident Fund. But we would also bring on board the board of attorneys, the practitioners, so that at least when we talk about the experiences, because some of the claims that you're going to get or some of the reports you're going to get, people are going to talk about their experience with their lawyer. So all of those, we're going to include both the boards and the Road Accident Fund, just to make sure that we can clean the journey just on behalf of the victim, because it can't be correct. Because from what I'm hearing, you are actually saying that majority of the claims that were ever in this country, ever settled by the Road Accident Fund, happened as a result of the involvement of the practitioner, the legal practitioner. Meaning that anybody, there's no proof anywhere in the conversation I'm having with you that everybody's seeing. There's no proof that there has been any success made by people or victims that are directly claiming from the Road Accident Fund. And we're not saying it does not exist. We're saying that we don't have that record. That record has not been made. Until we proven otherwise, what we're saying at the moment, it is dangerous for you to even try on your own. Right? Is that
Exactly.
Because if that's what we're saying, then we come into a conclusion that says that as we part today, I want you to give an advice. Remove your whiteness, speak as a legal practitioner, to say what's the best thing to do when you are involved in this, in a road accident. We've already spoken about a few things, but we need to give a real advice to the listener, to the victim, to the viewer out there, to say what is it that we need to do, because this cannot go unchallenged.
Isaac, my advice would be is to engage a practitioner, take hands with that practitioner, trust in your practitioner, because he will make sure that your matter is successful. They will do everything that they can to ensure that you've got a successful claim. We, unfortunately, in a situation that we are confronted at all ends in terms of opposition to settle matters. Either at the Road Accident Fund, we're getting a huge challenges at the courts. We would love to be able to settle directly with the Road Accident Fund. The ideal would be to be able to lodge a claim, prepare it as the Road Accident Fund would require to have it in terms of the Act, and settle directly with the Road Accident Fund. It's possible. I've done it in the 90s when I was working there. I had charge of an office and I managed to settle all of my matters directly with the practitioners. It's possible. It's not a pipe dream or something that cannot be done. It has been done. And there must just be the political will from government to really get underneath the surface of what is happening at the fund. But for the victims in this process, I would really invite them to interrogate and to do research and to make sure that you engage a lawyer that you are comfortable with. And then you need to trust them as you trust in the Bible and in your faith, that that person would make sure that you would get the best possible compensation. We are officers of the court. We are there for the service of our clients. If we are being instructed, we are working for you, nail and tooth. Everything that we do is in the interest of our clients, and that's the way that it's always been, and that's the way that you should see it. That patience is just key, because this is not a quick process. It takes time, and the sooner that you can engage somebody that you're comfortable with, because simply speaking, you won't be able to navigate with this board notice being in place. You will never be able to lodge a claim successfully with the Road Accident Fund. Engage a lawyer, make sure that you're comfortable, and have the journey with them. They are there for you, and they will do whatever they can to make sure that you get justice done.
There you are. This is very intriguing for me, because for one minute I thought that attorneys cannot be trusted when it comes to this, the Road Accident Fund matters. And I think the truth is coming up. We are realizing that not relying on a legal practitioner can be very detrimental. So from me to you is that do not take this matter by yourself. It's too complex a matter. There are credible lawyers that are experts in this field. My advice to you is that please utilize an attorney of your choice who is a specialist in this area, regardless of color, right? The second important thing is that those who are benefiting from pushing out your claim and not settling your claim because it has not been done well, don't give them the pleasure of saving the money of the scheme because certain people would want to be seen as active and responsible managers in the fund, because this is where it is. We need to ensure that we reduce the number of accidents on our roads and save lives. But those that are finding themselves in the unfortunate and undesirable position must be settled. And that should not be a discussion. And I think we end this show and say that it is your responsibility as the follower, as the victim, to ensure that you follow it to the T. And the only way to do that is for the attorney. And I don't care. Anybody who says that, no, he's been paid by the attorneys, I know, I've experienced it firsthand, that even all our attempts as a family, I come from a family that at least has got a benefit of a bit of education. But we were still not able to do any of these things, and I would not want to see anybody doing that. And any claim that I could be, or this show is about attorneys, and because I've had some of those things, you can go and fly. But what we're doing here is to ensure that the actual victim gets the benefit. So Gert, thank you very much, Ndate Gert Nel, for giving us the pleasure of educating us. We will share this with all victims out there. It's going to be on our platform at all times. We're doing this because we're going to go on a serious roadshow to educate passengers and victims on how to navigate this universe. And we would like to have some conversations with you on how we partner with all the attorneys. Not Gert Nel alone, but all the attorneys in different provinces, that we can take a message to both the victims and take it to schools, because that's where it matters the most. But for today, thank you very much. Thank you for spending your time with us.
Only a pleasure, Isaac. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. I'm out. See you next time in the next episode. Be blessed.
Yo, en het rijm.